The city looks different from 42 stories up. Chicago spreads out beneath the penthouse windows like a circuit board, all glowing lines and pulsing nodes of light. From this height, you can't see the blood in the streets, can't hear the sirens, can't smell the fear that hangs over the south side like smoke from 1,000 fires that never quite go out. Elias Salvatore stands at the glass, one hand pressed against the cold surface, watching his reflection merge with the skyline. 27 years old, dark suit that cost more than his first car, a 9mm Beretta on the mahogany desk behind him, next to a crystal tumbler of whiskey he hasn't touched. June 12, 1989, 11:43 at night. In 17 minutes, everything he's built over the past 4 years will either stand or collapse. In 17 minutes, he'll know if he's a hero or a traitor, if the man who remade him was a monster or a prophet, if the blood on his hands washes off or stains forever. But that's not where this story begins. Every fall starts with a step. Sometimes you see it coming. Sometimes the ground just opens up beneath you, and you're gone before you even know you were standing on the edge. For Elias Salvatore, the ground opened up on August 15th, 1985, at 11:37 at night when his phone rang, and a voice he'd known his entire life said 4 words that changed everything. "Your father's dead. Run." 4 years earlier, August 15th, 1985. The apartment on North Sheffield Avenue wasn't much. Studio fourth floor walk-up windows that rattled when the L train passed. But it was Elias's, paid for with student loans and weekend shifts at the university library. The lease had his name on it, not his father's. That mattered more than the peeling paint or the radiator that clanked like a dying animal every morning at 6. He'd been studying. Corporate Law, Chapter 7, the desk lamp making a yellow pool in the darkness. 23 years old and 3 months from finishing his degree at Northwestern. 3 months from the bar exam. 3 months from a future that didn't involve his last name or his father's business or the weight of expectation that had pressed down on him since the day he was born, small and sickly and wrong. The phone rang at 11:37. Elias knew the time because he'd been checking the clock every 10 minutes waiting. His father had called a meeting for midnight. Family business. Required attendance. No exceptions. The old man didn't ask. He commanded. And when Dante Salvatore commanded, you obeyed or you learned what disobedience cost. But the voice on the phone wasn't his father's. Elias, Lucian Carver, the consigliere, 56 years old and sharp as winter wind, the only man in the organization who'd ever looked at Elias like he was worth something. Listen to me very carefully. Your father's dead. They're coming for you. You need to run right now. The words didn't make sense at first. They were sounds without meaning, syllables that refused to assemble into coherent thought. What? Who's coming? What are you, boy? No time. Out the back. Fire escape. Go to ground. Don't call anyone. Don't go anywhere they'd expect. I'll contact you when it's safe. The line went dead. Elias sat frozen, the receiver still pressed to his ear, listening to the dial tone. His mind spun like tires on ice, finding no traction. His father dead. Impossible. Dante Salvatore was a force of nature, 60 years old and harder than the Chicago winter, the kind of man who'd outlive his enemies through sheer stubborn will. But Lucian didn't lie, and Lucian didn't panic. Elias dropped the phone and moved. No conscious decision. Pure animal instinct. He grabbed his jacket, his wallet, the keys to the Honda Civic rusting in the alley below. His hands shook as he reached for the doorknob. He never made it to the door. The knock came first, 3 sharp raps, then a voice calm and professional. Elias Salvatore, we know you're in there. We're not here to hurt you. We just want to talk. Elias backed away from the door. His apartment had 2 exits. The front door and the fire escape window in the bedroom. He turned, moved fast, reaching the window just as he heard the splintering crack of the front door being kicked in. The fire escape was old iron bolted to brick that crumbled a little more every year. Elias climbed through the window, feet finding the metal grating, 4 stories down to the alley. He could make it. He had to make it. He made it 3 steps before he saw them. 2 men at the bottom of the fire escape. 2 more coming up from above from the roof access. All 4 moving with the casual efficiency of men who'd done this before. No rushing, no shouting, just the steady, inexorable closing of a trap. The man climbing up from below looked up, made eye contact. Early 30s, dark jacket, expression that gave away nothing. Easy, Elias. Like my partner said, we're just here to talk. Elias looked down at the alley, 20 feet to the dumpster. Maybe he could jump. Maybe he'd break both legs and they'd pick him up like a sack of garbage and throw him in the trunk. Maybe running would just make this worse. His father was dead. Lucian had said run, but running hadn't worked. The decision got made for him when the man from above reached the platform and put a hand on Elias's shoulder. Not rough, almost gentle. The kind of touch you'd give a spooked horse. Come on down. No one needs to get hurt here. Elias went down. What else was there to do? They put him in a car, black Lincoln Continental, leather seats that smelled like cigarettes and something metallic he didn't want to think about. One man on either side, two in front. Nobody spoke. The engine purred through streets Elias had known his whole life, heading south and west, away from the lights and the university and the life he'd almost escaped into. The warehouse district. Every city has places where the official version and the real version stop matching up. Places where trucks come and go at odd hours and nobody asks what's inside. Where the lights are always dim and the security cameras always seem to be broken. Where deals get made and problems get solved, and sometimes people go in and don't come out. The car pulled up to a loading dock, rolling metal door already open and yellow light spilling out into the darkness. The men walked Elias inside without ceremony, one hand each on his elbows, professional and impersonal. The warehouse was old, high ceiling held up by iron pillars, floor stained with decades of oil and rust and things that had once been liquid. Maybe 50 people inside arranged in rough rows. Elias recognized some of them, soldiers, associates, men who worked for his father's organization who ran the gambling and the protection and the union contracts that kept money flowing into Dante Salvatore's pockets. They were all on their knees, hands zip-tied behind their backs, 3 guards for every 10 prisoners standing at intervals with shotguns cradled casual and ready. Elias's legs went weak. One of his escorts felt it tightened his grip, kept him upright and moving. At the far end of the warehouse near a rusted metal desk that looked like it had been there since the 50s, a man sat in a folding chair. 37, maybe 38, tall, dark hair starting to gray at the temples, expensive suit that fit perfectly tailored to shoulders that spoke of hours in the gym or years of hard work. Handsome in a way that made you think of old movie stars, the kind with sharp jawlines and eyes that looked right through you. Kieran Ashford. Elias knew the name. Everyone in the life knew the name. The man who'd built an empire from nothing. No family connections, no inherited territory. Just intelligence and ruthlessness and an almost supernatural ability to see 3 moves ahead of everyone else. And at Kieran Ashford's feet, crumpled, like discarded laundry, lay Dante Salvatore, Elias's father, eyes open and empty, blood pooled beneath him, already going tacky and dark, 2 bullet holes in the chest, 1 in the head, dead. The world tilted. Elias heard a sound, realized it was coming from his own throat. Not a scream, something smaller, a broken sound like air escaping from a punctured lung. The men holding him walked him forward, past the rows of kneeling prisoners, past guards who didn't look at him, eyes scanning the room with the bored professionalism of men doing a job they'd done too many times before. They stopped 10 feet from Kieran Ashford, let go of Elias's arms, stepped back. Kieran stood, slow controlled movement, brushed invisible dust from his slacks, walked around the desk and stopped 5 feet from Elias, looking at him with eyes the color of steel in winter. Elias Salvatore. Not a question, a statement. His voice was low, educated, with just a trace of something rougher underneath. Southside Chicago, buried under years of self-improvement, but never quite gone. Do you know who I am? Elias tried to speak. His throat had closed up. He swallowed, tried again. Yes. Good, that saves time. Kieran put his hands in his pockets, relaxed, like they were having a conversation at a cocktail party instead of standing next to a corpse. I want you to understand something before we go any further. This wasn't personal. Your father and I had business. He failed to honor his obligations. This is the consequence. Nothing more, nothing less. Elias looked at his father's body, the blood, the empty eyes. Nothing more, nothing less. What obligations is $6.8 million? Kieran said it like he was discussing the weather. Borrowed 18 months ago to expand his territory west into Cicero and Berwyn. He promised a return within a year. Instead, he lost it. Atlantic City, craps tables and bad decisions. When I asked for repayment, he stalled. When I insisted, he tried to form an alliance with the Cortese family to push me out. That couldn't stand. $6.8 million. Elias felt dizzy. He'd known his father was a gambler. Everyone knew, but that kind of money, that kind of debt. So you killed him. I collected what I was owed. Kieran's expression didn't change. Your father understood the rules. He chose to break them. Now we're here. And them, Elias gestured at the kneeling prisoners. 52 men and women, some young, some old, all terrified. What did they do? They worked for your father, benefited from his organization, carried out his orders. Kieran walked slowly along the line of prisoners, hands still in his pockets. In a just world, they'd share his fate. But I'm not interested in justice. I'm interested in order. And order requires proportional response. He turned back to Elias. Which brings us to you. Elias's heart hammered against his ribs. His hands were shaking. He shoved them in his jacket pockets so Kieran wouldn't see. You're going to kill me too. That depends. On what? Kieran smiled. Small thing barely there, but it changed his whole face for just a second. Made him look younger, almost friendly. On whether you're smarter than your father. He walked back to the desk, picked up a folder, flipped it open, began reading like he was reviewing a resume. Elias Michael Salvatore, 23 years old. Northwestern University pre-law, 3.7 GPA. No criminal record, no arrests. By all accounts, you've spent the last 4 years trying very hard to distance yourself from your family business. He looked up. Why? The question caught Elias off guard. What? Why try to escape your Dante Salvatore's only son, heir to an organization worth millions? Most men would embrace that. You ran from it. I want to know why. Elias stared at him. The truth sat in his mouth, bitter and small. Because I'm weak. Because I had seizures as a kid and my father looked at me like I was broken. Because every time I walked into a room, I could see the disappointment in his eyes. Because I wanted to be something more than a tool for his ambitions. But he couldn't say any of that. So he said something simpler. I wanted to be a lawyer. Kieran closed the folder. You are a lawyer, nearly. 3 months from your degree, then the bar exam, then a nice quiet life in some corporate firm, drafting contracts and filing motions. Safe. Respectable. Nothing like this. He gestured at the warehouse, the prisoners, the blood. That's what you wanted, yes. Liar. The word cracked across the space between them like a gunshot. Elias flinched. Kieran stepped closer, close enough that Elias could smell his cologne. Something expensive and understated. If you wanted safe, you'd have changed your name, moved to another city, cut all ties. But you stayed in Chicago, kept the name Salvatore, went to family dinners every Sunday. You didn't want to escape. You wanted your father to see you differently, to value what you could offer instead of what you couldn't. Am I wrong? Elias said nothing. His throat had closed up again. Kieran nodded like Elias had confirmed something. Your father came to me yesterday, 4 in the afternoon. He knew I was going to move against him, knew he couldn't win, so he made an offer. He opened the folder again, pulled out a single sheet of paper. Handwritten. Dante Salvatore's distinctive scrawl, all hard angles and aggressive slashes. He offered you, in exchange for the debt and safe passage for his inner circle. He said you were smart, educated, obedient, a rare commodity in this business. Someone who could think strategically, handle legal complications, provide value beyond muscle and intimidation. Kieran handed the paper to Elias. He sold you to save himself. Elias took the paper. His hands had stopped shaking. Everything had stopped. The world had narrowed down to the words on the page written in his father's hand. My son for the debt. Smart investment. He'll do what you tell him. The signature at the bottom. Dante Salvatore, dated yesterday, August 14th, 1985. His father had sold him, traded him like livestock, and then died anyway. The paper slipped from Elias's fingers, drifted to the floor like a leaf. Kieran watched him, patient, waiting. The thing is, Kieran said quietly, your father was right. You are valuable, maybe more valuable than he realized. Legal expertise, strategic thinking, the ability to navigate legitimate business and criminal enterprise. That's rare. Most men in this life are good at one or the other, not both. He picked up the paper, folded it, tucked it back in the folder. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to work for me. 30 days, trial period. You'll prove your worth, demonstrate your capabilities. Show me you're the asset your father claimed. If you succeed, these 52 people go free. If you fail, or if you try to run, they die. All of them, 1 bullet each, quick and professional. Elias looked at the prisoners, recognized faces. Tony Marchetti, who ran the Southside Protection Racket. Angela Rossi, the bookkeeper. Marco DeLuca, barely 19, whose only crime was being Dante Salvatore's nephew, 52 lives. His father's people, not innocent, but not guilty of anything except working for the wrong man. Why? The word came out hoarse. Why not just kill me with him? Why this? Kieran's expression shifted. Something almost like respect. Because I'm not your father. I don't waste assets. And because I want to see what you're made of. Your father saw weakness when he looked at you. I see potential. The question is, which one of us is right? He extended his hand, not aggressive, an offer. 30 days, Elias. Prove you're worth keeping alive. Elias looked at the hand, at the 52 prisoners, at his father's body still cooling on the concrete. He'd wanted to escape, to be something different, something better. Instead, he was here, in a warehouse that smelled like blood and rust, being offered a devil's bargain by a man who'd just killed his father. 30 days. He could run, try to get away, go to the police, disappear into witness protection. But Lucian had said they were coming for him. Kieran had found him in minutes. And if he ran, 52 people died. He could refuse. Spit in Kieran Ashford's face, tell him to go to hell, die with whatever dignity he had left. But that was just suicide with extra steps. Or he could take the hand, do the 30 days, find a way to survive, find a way to win. His father had sold him. Kieran had killed him. The old life was gone. The law degree, the corporate firm, the clean escape into respectability, all of it burned down to ash. What was left? Survival. That's all there ever was. Survival and the choice of how to do it. Elias reached out, shook Kieran Ashford's hand. The grip was firm, warm. The hand of a man who knew exactly what he was doing and had never doubted himself for a second. 30 days, Elias said. Kieran smiled. Good. We start tomorrow. Someone will collect you at 8. Until then, you'll stay in the penthouse. Private floor, Trump Tower. Comfortable. Secure. Think of it as protective custody. He released Elias's hand, nodded to the guards. Take him. They walked Elias back through the warehouse, past the prisoners who watched him with desperate eyes, past his father's corpse, out to the waiting car. As they pulled away, Elias looked back, saw Kieran Ashford standing in the doorway, silhouetted against the yellow light, watching. The car merged into traffic, headed north toward the lake and the towers and the city that looked so different depending on which direction you were falling. Elias leaned his head against the window, felt the vibration of the engine, the hum of tires on asphalt, thought about his father's last act. Selling him, bargaining with his own son's life and losing anyway. Thought about Kieran Ashford's words. Your father saw weakness, I see potential. Thought about the hand he'd shaken. The deal he'd made. 30 days. He closed his eyes and tried not to think about what would come after. The penthouse occupied the entire 42nd floor of Trump Tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows on 3 sides showing Chicago spread out like a glittering promise. Hardwood floors, leather furniture, art on the walls that probably cost more than Elias's entire education. A kitchen with granite countertops and appliances that looked like they belonged in a spaceship. 2 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a study with built-in bookshelves. Beautiful. Empty. A cage made of luxury. The guards left him at the door, told him someone would bring food in an hour, that he shouldn't try to leave, that the building had security and they'd know if he moved. Then they were gone, and Elias was alone. He walked through the space slowly, touching things, the back of the leather couch, the spines of books on the shelves, the cool glass of the windows, trying to make it real, trying to process what had just happened. His father was dead. He'd shaken the killer's hand. He had 30 days to prove he was worth keeping alive. The weight of it hit him all at once. Elias made it 3 steps before his legs gave out. He sank to the floor in the middle of the living room, back against the couch, and put his head in his hands. He didn't cry. Couldn't. The tears were there, but they wouldn't come. Everything just felt hollow, scooped out, a shell with nothing inside. Time passed. He didn't track it. Eventually he heard a sound and looked up to find a man standing in the doorway. Late 50s, gray hair, expensive suit, calm eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. Lucian Carver. Hello, Elias. Elias stared at him. You work for him now. I work for whoever's in charge. That's what a consigliere does. Lucian walked into the room, sat in one of the leather chairs, moved like a man completely at ease. Your father's dead. Kieran Ashford runs Chicago now. So yes, I work for him. You called me, told me to run. I did, and you should have. But you didn't make it far enough, and now here we are. Elias pushed himself up off the floor, stood on shaky legs. Did you know that he was going to kill my father? Yes. Did you try to stop it? No. Lucian's expression didn't change. Your father made choices, bad ones. He borrowed money he couldn't repay, tried to solve the problem with violence instead of negotiation. Kieran gave him multiple chances to make it right. He refused. This is the consequence. So you just, what, stood by and watched? I advised him not to go to war with Kieran Ashford. I told him to pay the debt to negotiate terms to swallow his pride and survive. He ignored me. What happened after that was his choice, not mine. Elias wanted to hit him. This calm, rational man who'd been part of his life since childhood, who'd taught him to play chess, who'd always treated him with more respect than his own father, who'd survived by knowing when to switch sides. Why are you here? Lucian stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city. Because Kieran asked me to check on you, to make sure you understood the situation. And because I wanted to tell you something your father never would have. What? Lucian turned, met his eyes. You're not weak, Elias. You're not broken. Your father was wrong about you. He saw your epilepsy, your preference for books over violence, your inability to be the brutal heir he wanted, and he called it weakness. But there are different kinds of strength, and the kind you have, it's rarer than what he had. Rarer than what most men in this life have. He walked to the door, stopped, looked back. Kieran sees it. That's why you're alive. That's why he gave you this chance. Don't waste it trying to be what your father wanted. Be what you actually are. That's the only way you survive the next 30 days. Then he was gone. Elias stood alone in the penthouse, looked out at Chicago, at the lights and the darkness and the spaces in between where deals were made and lives were traded and men like his father died for making the wrong enemies. 30 days. He'd wanted to escape, to be different, to matter. Careful what you wish for. The city glittered below him, indifferent, eternal, waiting to see if he'd fall or fly. Elias pressed his hand against the glass, felt the cold seep through, closed his eyes, and began to count. 1. Morning came through floor-to-ceiling windows like an interrogation light. Elias hadn't slept. He'd spent the night on the leather couch fully dressed, watching the city transform from darkness to gray to gold, watching delivery trucks navigate empty streets, watching early risers emerge from apartment buildings like ants from a disturbed hill. Normal people, living normal lives, going to normal jobs where nobody's father got murdered and nobody shook hands with killers and nobody counted down 30 days until 52 people lived or died based on your performance. At 7:45, someone knocked. Elias opened the door to find a woman. Mid-40s, dark hair pulled back severe, dressed like she was heading to a board meeting. Professional, efficient. She held a garment bag and a leather briefcase. Mr. Salvatore, I'm Catherine Ross. Mr. Ashford sent me to prepare you for the day. Her voice matched her appearance. No nonsense. Direct. May I come in? Elias stepped aside. She entered like she owned the place, laying the garment bag across the back of the couch, setting the briefcase on the coffee table. First things first. Shower, shave, make yourself presentable. The bathroom is stocked with everything you need. You have 20 minutes. What's happening at 8? Mr. Ashford is collecting you personally. He wants to show you something. Questions later. Shower now. Elias went, stood underwater hot enough to hurt, scrubbing at skin that felt contaminated, trying to wash off the warehouse, the blood, the memory of his father's empty eyes. It didn't work. Some stains go deeper than soap can reach. When he emerged, Catherine had laid out clothes on the bed. Not his, new, tailored suit, charcoal gray, white shirt, silk tie the color of dark wine, leather shoes that probably cost more than a month's rent on his old apartment. He dressed. The suit fit perfectly. Someone had taken his measurements without him knowing. The thought made his skin crawl. Catherine appeared in the doorway, gave him a once-over, nodded approval. Better, Mr. Ashford values presentation. In this business, how you look tells people how seriously to take you. You look like a graduate student, they treat you like a child. You look like this, she gestured at him. They treat you like someone who matters. I don't want to matter to these people. Then you've already failed. She picked up the briefcase, handed it to him. Inside, you'll find a legal pad, 3 pens, and your Northwestern University transcript. Mr. Ashford requested it. I don't know why, but when he asks for something, you have it ready. The intercom buzzed. Catherine walked to the panel, pressed the button. Mr. Ashford is here. She turned to Elias. Her expression softened. Just slightly, just enough to show there was a person under the professional mask. A piece of advice, free of charge. Mr. Ashford is not your father. He doesn't care if you're weak or strong, brave or cowardly. He cares if you're useful. Be useful. The rest will follow. Then she was gone, and Elias was alone with the briefcase and the expensive suit and the knowledge that in 30 seconds, Kieran Ashford would walk through that door. He counted to 10. The door opened. Kieran looked exactly as he had the night before. Same tailored perfection, same controlled energy. But in daylight through windows instead of warehouse fluorescence, Elias could see details he'd missed. The fine lines around the eyes, the small scar above the left eyebrow, the way he moved like a man who'd spent years learning to read rooms and people and situations with the efficiency of a predator. Good morning, Kieran's gaze traveled over Elias, assessing. You didn't sleep. Not a question, a statement. No. Understandable. First night after trauma rarely involves sleep. The mind processes, replays, tries to find the moment where different choices would have led to different outcomes. He walked to the windows, looked out. Did you find that moment? Elias followed, stood beside him. No, because it doesn't exist. Your father's choices led here long before last night. You were just collateral damage. Kieran turned, ready to be something else. I don't know what that means. It means ready to learn. Come on, we have somewhere to be. The car was a Mercedes, black naturally. Kieran drove himself. No guards, no entourage. Just the two of them navigating morning traffic with the easy confidence of someone who knew these streets like the lines on his own palm. They headed south, past the loop, past Chinatown, into neighborhoods where the buildings got shorter and the lots got wider and the businesses had bars on the windows. Places Elias knew existed but had never actually visited. His father's territory had been north side. Different world. Tell me about your education. Kieran's eyes stayed on the road. Not the official version, the real one. Why law? Why Northwestern? Why corporate instead of criminal? Elias watched the city scroll past. Pawn shops and corner stores and churches with fading paint. My father wanted me to work for him, handle legal issues for the organization. I wanted something different. Different how? Clean, legitimate, something where I could wake up and not wonder if today was the day the FBI kicked in the door. Noble, naive, but noble. Kieran took a left onto a street lined with warehouses. Your father saw that as rejection, took it personally, made you feel small for wanting it. How do you know that? Because that's what weak men do. They see strength they don't possess as a threat instead of an asset. Your father was many things, ruthless, ambitious, connected, but he was also insecure, especially about you. The Mercedes pulled into a parking lot, chain link fence, loading docks, a building that looked like it had been manufacturing something since the 50s and would keep manufacturing it until the foundation crumbled into dust. Kieran killed the engine, turned in his seat. Everything I own, everything I've built, it's legal, on paper. Property holdings, legitimate businesses, investments that pass every audit. But the money that built it, that came from the other side. Gambling, protection, loan sharking. All the traditional revenue streams. The question isn't whether you're willing to get your hands dirty. The question is whether you're smart enough to wash them afterward. He got out. Elias followed. The building's front entrance had a small brass plaque. Ashford Properties, LLC. Inside industrial carpet that had seen better decades. Fluorescent lights that hummed. A reception desk where a man in his 60s at reading the Tribune. Morning, Frank. Morning, Mr. Ashford. Frank looked at Elias with mild interest. This the new guy. This is Elias Salvatore. He'll be working with us. Treat him with respect. Frank nodded, went back to his paper. They took stairs instead of the elevator. 3 flights up. Down a hallway with offices on either side, mostly empty, a few, with people hunched over desks covered in paperwork. Kieran's office was corner, naturally. Windows on 2 walls, desks that looked like actual mahogany instead of veneer. Bookshelves lined with legal texts, business journals, and what looked like first editions of Hemingway and Fitzgerald. A chess set on a side table, mid-game pieces, frozen in combat. Sit, Moynier and Elias sat. Kieran went to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder. Thick. Set it on the desk between them. 6 months ago, I acquired a property. South Loop. Old factory converted into loft apartments in the 70s, fell into disrepair in the 80s. The owner owed me money, couldn't pay, so I took the building. He opened the folder. Documents, photographs, architectural drawings. Problem is it's a mess. Zoning issues, building code violations, liens from 3 different contractors. The previous owner was either incompetent or deliberately sabotaging the value. Maybe both. He pushed the folder toward Elias. I want to flip it, renovate, bring it up to code, sell to a developer for 3 times what I have into it. But first I need to untangle the legal nightmare. That's where you come in. Elias stared at the folder. I'm not a real estate lawyer. You're a law student with a 3.7 GPA and a specialty in corporate structures. More importantly, you're motivated. 52 lives motivated. I'd say that makes you exactly the right person for the job. This is the test, real estate law. This is day one of the test. Kieran sat on the edge of the desk. You have until Friday. 4 days. I want a complete analysis. Every legal problem identified. Every solution mapped out. Timeline for resolution. Cost estimates. And a strategy for making this work without attracting attention from regulators or competitors. Think you can handle that? Elias pulled the folder closer. Flipped through the first few pages. Zoning variance applications. Title search documents. Inspector reports flagged in red. It was a disaster. The kind of project that would take a real attorney weeks to sort through. 4 days. He looked up. Kieran was watching him with that same assessing expression, waiting to see if he'd panic or push back or find a way forward. I'll need access to a law library and a computer. Down the hall, third door. Anything else? Coffee and lunch. I'm not stopping until I figure this out. Kieran smiled. Small. Genuine. Good answer. The law library was a converted conference room. Shelves full of legal texts, case law compilations, zoning regulations for Cook County and the city of Chicago. A desk with a computer that looked like it cost more than Elias's car. Windows overlooking the street below. Elias spread the contents of the folder across the desk. Started making lists. Problems in one column. Potential solutions in another. Questions that needed research in a third. The work was familiar. This was what he'd been training for. Analysis, strategy, finding the path through complex regulations and conflicting interests. It didn't matter that the client was a killer. The law was the law. The problems were solvable. He lost himself in it. Hours passed like minutes. He barely noticed when someone brought coffee and sandwiches. Barely registered the sun moving across the sky, the shadows lengthening. By 6 p.m. he had a framework. The zoning issues could be resolved with a variance application, but it would require community board approval. The building code violations were extensive but fixable with the right contractor and enough money. The liens were the real problem. 3 contractors claiming they were owed payment for work done. 2 of the claims looked legitimate. The third smelled like fraud. He was deep into Illinois lien law when the door opened. Lucian Carver, still immaculate, still calm, carrying 2 cups of coffee and looking like he had all the time in the world. Heard you've been at it for 9 hours straight. Thought you might need a break. Elias leaned back, his neck cracked, his eyes burned. I'm close. Another hour and I'll have the analysis done. Lucian set 1 coffee in front of him, sat in the other chair, sipped his own cup. Kieran's impressed. He said that he didn't have to. I've worked with him long enough to read the signs. You didn't complain, didn't ask for help, didn't try to negotiate easier terms. You just put your head down and worked. That matters to him. Elias rubbed his eyes. This isn't what I expected. I thought, I don't know, violence, criminal activity, not real estate law. Kieran's smarter than your father. He understands that sustainable power comes from legitimate business. The criminal enterprises fund the legal ones. The legal ones provide cover and generate clean money. It's a cycle, and it requires people who can operate on both sides. Lucian set down his cup. Your father never understood that. He saw the world in simple terms. Power and weakness, loyalty and betrayal. He never learned to think strategically. And that got him killed. That got him killed. They sat in silence. Outside, the city was transitioning from day to night. Street lights flickering on. Traffic thinning. The sky going from blue to purple to black. Can I ask you something? Elias kept his eyes on the window. Yesterday, when you called, you told me to run. If you're working for Kieran, why warn me? Lucian was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. Because I've known you since you were 6 years old. Because I watched your father treat you like a disappointment instead of a son. Because you deserved a chance to get out. I gave you that chance. You didn't take it. But I still gave it. He stood, walked to the door, paused. Finish your analysis. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be harder. Then he was gone, and Elias was alone with the coffee and the legal documents and the growing realization that the lines between enemy and ally were more blurred than he'd thought. He worked another hour, finished the analysis. Typed it up in a clean document with sections and subsections and citations to relevant case law. 23 pages. comprehensive, professional. It was good work. He knew it was good work. The question was whether good work was enough to keep 52 people alive. Day 2 started the same. Catherine with clothes, Kieran with the car, but this time they went to a different location. Restaurant supply warehouse on the west side, another Ashford Properties holding. Inside, rows of industrial kitchen equipment, ovens big enough to roast a pig, freezers that could store a month's worth of food, the kind of place that outfitted hotels and catering companies and anyone who needed to feed large numbers of people efficiently. Kieran led him to a back office, introduced him to a man named Rafe Costa, late 20s, nervous energy, dark circles under his eyes that spoke of too many sleepless nights. Rafe runs this operation, inventory sales distribution. He's good at his job, but last month someone stole $50,000 worth of equipment, high-end mixers, copper cookware, espresso machines, gone overnight. No signs of forced entry, no obvious suspects. Kieran looked at Elias. I want you to find out who took it and how. I'm not a detective. No, but you're smart and you're motivated and you're not emotionally invested in the answer. Rafe here, Kieran gestured at the younger man. He's too close. He sees his employees as family. Makes him blind. You don't have that problem. Rafe shifted uncomfortably. Mr. Ashford, I can handle this. I don't need... You have 3 days. Kieran spoke over him, still looking at Elias. Figure out who, how, and why. Report back Friday. Same as the real estate analysis. Questions. 1,000. But Elias asked the important one. Do I have authority to interview employees? You have whatever authority you need. Rafe will cooperate. Won't you, Rafe? Rafe nodded. Didn't look happy about it. Kieran left. Elias stood in the office with a man who clearly resented his presence. Outside, forklifts moved pallets. Workers called to each other in English and Spanish. Normal warehouse sounds, normal warehouse work. Except nothing about this was normal. Look, Rafe said, I don't know what Mr. Ashford told you, but I've been running this place for 3 years. I know these people. They're good people, hard workers. None of them would steal from me. Someone did? Then it was an outside job. Someone broke in after hours, disabled the alarm, took what they wanted. Professionals. Elias walked to the window, looked out at the warehouse floor. 20, maybe 25 employees visible, moving with the practiced efficiency of people who'd done the same tasks so many times they could do them in their sleep. Show me the security logs, employee schedules for the night of the theft, and I want to see the stolen items list. This is a waste of time. Maybe, but it's my time to waste. And if I don't figure this out, someone else pays the price. So show me the logs. Rafe's expression shifted, something between resentment and curiosity. Who pays the price? Elias turned, met his eyes. People you'll never meet. Now show me the logs. The investigation took 2 days. Elias interviewed every employee who'd been working the week of the theft. Cross-referenced schedules with security footage. Traced inventory movements. Built timelines and maps and probability trees. He worked like a man possessed, because that's what he was. Possessed by the need to be useful. To prove Catherine's advice right. To show Kieran that the asset was worth keeping. The answer revealed itself on day 3. Wednesday afternoon, Elias sat in Rafe's office surrounded by paperwork and saw the pattern. The thefts had happened on a Monday night. Security systems showed no alarms triggered, but the system had been offline for maintenance the previous Friday. Brought back online Tuesday morning. A 12-hour window where someone with access could have waltzed in and out without leaving an electronic trail, and only 3 people had keys to override the system during maintenance. Rafe, the head of security, and a night shift supervisor named Marcus Webb. Marcus Webb, 42 years old, 15-year employee, exemplary record, no disciplinary issues, no financial problems that showed up in the basic background check. But Marcus had taken 4 personal days the week after the theft, and when Elias pulled credit reports, he found something interesting. Marcus's sister lived in Phoenix. Marcus's sister had been admitted to the hospital 3 weeks before the theft. Diagnosis stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Treatment experimental, not covered by insurance. Cost $60,000, $60,000. $50,000 in stolen equipment. The math was almost perfect. Elias sat back, stared at the paperwork, felt the weight of knowledge settle on his shoulders like a coat made of lead. He'd found the answer. The who, the how, the why. Everything Kieran had asked for. Now came the hard part. What to do with it. Thursday morning, back at the Trump Tower penthouse. Kieran sat across from Elias in the living room, reading the 2 reports. The real estate analysis. The theft investigation. Taking his time, making notes in the margins with a fountain pen that probably cost more than Elias's entire wardrobe. 15 minutes of silence. Elias waited, watched the city through the windows, counted his heartbeats. Finally, Kieran set the papers down. The real estate analysis is excellent. You found problems I didn't know existed and solutions that are actually implementable. The zoning variance strategy is particularly clever. If we can get community board approval, we save 6 months and $200,000. He picked up the second report. This one is interesting for different reasons. I found your thief. You did. Marcus Webb, 15-year employee, stole to pay for his sister's cancer treatment. Textbook desperation crime. Kieran looked up. What do you think I should do about it? The question landed like a punch. Elias had spent the last 18 hours dreading this moment, knowing it was coming, knowing there was no good answer. I think you should understand why he did it. I do understand. Desperate people make desperate choices. But understanding doesn't change the fact that he stole from me, from this organization. If I let that stand, what message does it send? That you're human, that you understand circumstances. That loyalty goes both ways. Kieran smiled, sharp, predatory. Or it sends the message that I'm weak. That theft is acceptable if you have a good story. That the organization exists to solve your personal problems instead of the other way around. He stood, walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Your father would have killed Marcus, put a bullet in his head and left the body somewhere visible. A message. This is what happens when you steal from the Salvatore family. Clean, simple, effective. Elias's mouth went dry. What are you going to do? I'm going to let you decide. The words hung in the air like smoke. Elias stared at Kieran's back, at the city beyond, at the impossible choice being laid at his feet. What? Kieran turned. You found him. You understand the situation. You're the one who has to live with the consequences of whatever happens next. So you decide. Execute him for betraying the organization. Let him go with a warning or something in between. Your call. I can't. I'm not qualified to make that decision. You're more qualified than you think. You see the full picture. The theft, the motivation, the ripple effects. Most people only see what they want to see. Their own interests, their own perspective. You see the whole board. That's rare. So use it. Make a choice. Elias's hands were shaking again. He shoved them in his pockets. If I say kill him, you'll do it. Yes. And if I say let him go, I'll consider it. But I might override you. Depends on your reasoning. Some choice. Elias walked to the window, stood beside Kieran, looked down at the streets 42 floors below. Tiny cars, tiny people, living tiny lives that didn't involve impossible decisions. Marcus Webb, 15 years of loyal service, one desperate act, a sister dying in Phoenix. In the law, Elias said slowly, we have something called mitigating circumstances, factors that don't excuse a crime but explain it, make it understandable. Marcus committed theft. That's a crime. But he did it for a reason most people would sympathize with. Saving a family member. That's mitigation. Go on. If you kill him, you lose a good employee. You send a message that loyalty doesn't matter, only obedience. And you make everyone else in the organization wonder if they're one bad day away from a bullet. He turned to face Kieran. But if you show mercy, structured mercy, you get something better. You get loyalty that's earned instead of coerced. Kieran's expression gave nothing away. What's structured mercy? Make him pay back what he stole, dock his wages, but also pay for his sister's treatment, not as a gift, as an advance against future work. He owes you. He knows he owes you. He works it off over time. And in the process, you've shown the organization that you take care of your people even when they make mistakes, as long as they come clean and make it right. Silence. Kieran studied him. Elias felt like a specimen under a microscope, every micro-expression being cataloged, every word being weighed. Your father would call that weakness. My father's dead. The words came out harder than Elias intended, but Kieran's expression shifted, something that might have been approval. Yes, he is. Kieran extended his hand. We'll do it your way. Marcus gets a chance to earn his way back. I'll make the arrangements. As for you, he gestured at the reports. You passed the first test, 4 days of analysis, 2 successful projects, 0 complaints. I'm impressed. Elias shook the offered hand. What's the second test? We'll get to that. First, you need to understand something. Kieran's grip tightened, just slightly, just enough to remind Elias who had the power here. What you did for Marcus is showing mercy. That was the right call, this time. But there will be situations where mercy is weakness, where the only answer is violence. When that time comes, I need to know you'll make the hard choice. Not the easy one, not the one that lets you sleep at night, the one that keeps the organization alive. He released Elias's hand. Can you do that? Elias thought about his father's body on the warehouse floor, about 52 people on their knees, about the choice between survival and morality, and whether there was any real difference. I don't know. Honest, good. Come on, there's someone you need to meet. The hospital was Northwestern Memorial, 8th floor, oncology wing. Kieran walked through like he owned the place, nodding at nurses who clearly recognized him. They took an elevator up, down a quiet hallway, to a private room at the end. Inside a woman, mid-50s, thin in the way cancer patients get thin, skin like paper, eyes that had seen too much pain but still held warmth. Isabeau Salvatore, Elias's mother. He stopped in the doorway, the world tilted. Kieran stood behind him, voice low. Your father told you she was dead. Car accident 6 months ago. He lied. She's been here the whole time. Stage 4 lymphoma. Treatment would have cost $200,000. Your father spent that money in Atlantic City instead. She's been on palliative care ever since. Elias couldn't move, couldn't speak, just stared at the woman who'd raised him, who'd read him stories and bandaged his skinned knees and told him it was okay to be different from his father. Who was supposed to be dead? Who was dying for real because Dante Salvatore had valued gambling more than her life? Isabeau's eyes opened, saw him, her face transformed. Elias, he crossed the room in 3 steps, took her hand. It felt like holding a bird, delicate, fragile, like if he squeezed too hard she'd shatter. Mom, I thought, Dad said you were. I know what he said. Her voice was weak but steady. He wanted you focused on your studies. Didn't want you distracted by this. That's what he told me. She squeezed his hand. I'm sorry, baby. I should have reached out. Should have told you myself, but he promised he was handling it. Kieran stepped into the room. Mrs. Salvatore, I'm Kieran Ashford. We spoke on the phone. Isabeau looked at him. No fear in her eyes, just weariness. The man who killed my husband. Yes, ma'am. Thank you for letting me see my son. The words hung there, impossible, incomprehensible. Thank you for killing your husband so I could see my son. Kieran nodded. I'll give you privacy. 30 minutes. He left. The door closed. Mother and son alone in a room that smelled like antiseptic and dying flowers. He told me what happened, Isabeau said. About the debt, about the deal your father tried to make, about you working for him now. She touched Elias's face. Are you okay? Was he okay? His father was dead. His mother was dying. He'd shaken hands with a killer and agreed to work for a criminal organization. He'd spent 4 days proving his worth to a man who could end his life with a phone call. No, good, you shouldn't be, but you're alive, and you're here. That's more than I expected. She closed her eyes. Tired, so tired. Your father, he wasn't a good man, Elias. I loved him once. But he became something else. Something cold. The business consumed him, made him cruel, especially to you. Mom, no, listen, I don't have much time. Days, maybe, and I need you to understand something. She opened her eyes, held his gaze. He sold you to save himself. That's who he was at the end, a coward willing to sacrifice his own child. Don't mourn him. Don't carry guilt for what happened. He made his choices. This is the consequence. The same words Kieran had used, choices and consequences. Mr. Ashford, Isabeau continued, he's dangerous. Maybe more dangerous than your father ever was because he's smarter. But he's not unnecessarily cruel. He paid for my treatment, all of it. The real treatment, not just palliative care, said it was an investment in you, that you'd work better knowing I was being cared for. Elias felt something crack in his chest. He's treating you. Started 2 days ago, aggressive chemo. The doctors say there's a chance, not a big one, but more than I had. She smiled, weak but real. So yes, the man who killed your father is also the man keeping your mother alive. Life's complicated, baby. The sooner you accept that, the better. They talked for the remaining 28 minutes. About her treatment, about his new situation, about memories from when he was small and the world was simpler, and fathers didn't sell sons, and mothers didn't get cancer from stress and neglect. When Kieran returned, Isabeau squeezed Elias's hand one more time. Be smart, be careful. But most of all, be yourself. Your father wanted you to be him. Mr. Ashford wants you to be useful. But you get to decide who you actually are. Don't waste that gift. Elias kissed her forehead, promised to visit again. Walked out of the room with his throat tight and his eyes burning. Kieran waited in the hallway, said nothing. Just walked beside him to the elevator. Down to the parking garage, into the Mercedes. They were halfway back to Trump Tower before Elias spoke. Why what? Why pay for her treatment? You don't owe her anything. You don't owe me anything beyond the 30 days. Kieran navigated traffic. Patient, controlled. Your father saw you as weak because you cared about things beyond power and money. He thought that made you useless. I think it makes you valuable, but only if you're not destroyed by grief and guilt and rage. He glanced over. Your mother alive and fighting, that gives you hope. Hope makes you functional. Functional makes you useful. It's an investment, nothing more. You're lying. Kieran's hands tightened on the wheel. Excuse me. You're lying. If it was just an investment, you'd have told me about her before now. Used it as leverage. But you didn't. You paid for treatment and didn't say anything. Which means it wasn't about usefulness. It was about something else. They pulled into the Trump Tower parking garage. Kieran killed the engine, sat in silence for a long moment. My mother died when I was 12, cancer. We couldn't afford treatment. She just wasted away. Took 6 months. I watched every day. He stared straight ahead. Your father had the money, had the ability to save her, and he chose craps tables instead. So yes, maybe it's not just about your usefulness. Maybe it's about making a different choice than the one that killed my mother. Does that satisfy you? Elias said nothing. What was there to say? Kieran got out, started toward the elevator, stopped, looked back. Tomorrow's Friday. You'll present both reports to my associates. Prove to them you're worth the investment. After that, he smiled, thin, sharp. We'll see if you're ready for the real work. The elevator doors closed. Elias sat alone in the Mercedes in the concrete tomb of the parking garage and tried to process the last 5 days. His father dead, his mother alive, a killer paying for cancer treatment, mercy for a thief, choices and consequences, and the blurred line between justice and survival. 4 days down, 26 to go. He closed his eyes, counted his heartbeats, wondered what the real work would look like, wondered if he'd survive it, wondered if he wanted to. Friday morning arrived with rain. Not the gentle kind that whispers against windows. The Chicago kind that hammers down like judgment, turning streets into rivers and making the whole city feel like it's drowning. Elias stood at the penthouse window watching water streak the glass. He'd slept 3 hours. Dreamed about his mother's paper-thin hand, about Marcus Webb stealing to save his sister, about his father's signature on a piece of paper that sold his only son like livestock. The coffee Catherine brought was strong enough to strip paint. He drank it anyway. Big day, she said, setting down a folder. Mr. Ashford's associates, 8 of them. They run different parts of the organization. Security, distribution, finance, legal. They're the ones who keep the machine running. She paused. They're also the ones who'll decide if you're worth keeping around after the 30 days. Kieran decides that. Kieran has final say, but he listens to his people. If they think you're dead weight, you'll have a much harder time proving otherwise. She straightened his tie. Professional, efficient. Don't let them intimidate you. Half of them are waiting for you to fail so they can say, I told you so. The other half don't care either way. Your job is to make them all care. How? By being so goddamn competent they can't afford to lose you. The meeting was at a restaurant in River North, a place called Rossi's, old school Italian, the kind with leather booths and dim lighting and waiters who'd been working there since Eisenhower. Closed to the public this morning. Just Kieran's people. Elias arrived at 9 sharp. Lucian met him at the door. Deep breath. You're about to meet the real power structure. He guided Elias through the empty dining room to a private back area. Round table. 8 men and women already seated. Coffee cups and breakfast plates scattered between them. Conversation dying as Elias entered. Kieran sat at the head of the table, gestured to an empty chair. Everyone, this is Elias Salvatore, Dante's son. He's been working with me this week. Elias, meet the people who make everything possible. He went around the table. Names and faces Elias tried to memorize. Marcus Quinn, early 40s, sharp suit, Scottish accent buried under years of Chicago, head of security and intelligence. The man who'd almost caught Elias as the FBI mole in a timeline that didn't exist yet. Angela Rossi, 50-something, silver hair, cold eyes that evaluated Elias like he was a spreadsheet that didn't balance. Chief financial officer, handled the money laundering and legitimate investments. Vincent Torres, late 30s, quiet, watchful, ran the Southside operations, protection, gambling, loan sharking. The traditional revenue streams Karen had mentioned. Sarah Chen, mid-40s, attorney, one of three in Chicago who'd defend organized crime figures and win, handled the legal issues that couldn't be solved with violence. David Park, 30s, tech specialist, made problems disappear digitally. False trails, encrypted communications wiped security footage. Catherine Ross, who Elias already knew. Operations coordinator, made sure everything ran on time and under budget. James Maloney, 60s, white hair, former Chicago PD, retired with full pension and a Rolodex of contacts still on the force. Liaison between the organization and law enforcement. And Lucian Carver, consigliere, the man who tied it all together. 8 people, different backgrounds, different skills. All of them looking at Elias like he was a problem they hadn't decided how to solve yet. Elias has spent this week on 2 projects, Kieran said. Real estate analysis for the South Loop property and investigation into the warehouse theft. He's going to present his findings. Then we'll discuss whether he's demonstrated sufficient value to continue. The weight of those words settled over the room like fog. Continue meant staying alive, meant keeping 52 people breathing, meant 26 more days of this tightrope walk between survival and complicity. Elias stood, pulled out his reports, hand steady, voice steadier. The South Loop property is a legal nightmare, but it's solvable. He walked them through it. The zoning issues, the building code violations, the fraudulent lien that could be challenged, the variant strategy that would save time and money, spoke in clear, precise language. No hedging, no uncertainty, just facts and solutions. Angela Rossi interrupted twice with questions about cost. Elias had answers, had built a spreadsheet breaking down expenses by category and timeline. Projected ROI if they flipped the property in 12 months versus 18 months versus holding for rental income. Sarah Chen asked about legal exposure. Elias cited 3 relevant cases, explained how the variance application positioned them favorably with the community board, suggested a strategy for managing public relations if community activists pushed back. 20 minutes. When he finished, the table was quiet. Then Angela spoke. The financial analysis is solid, better than solid. You found problems our usual contractors missed and solutions that actually make sense. She looked at Kieran. If he can execute on this, we'll make money. Real money. Kieran nodded. Second project, the theft. Elias switched gears, explained the investigation, the timeline, the pattern, Marcus Webb's sister, the desperate math of 50,000 stolen to save a life. Vincent Torres leaned forward. You found him. Good work. What's the recommendation? Here it was, the moment where theory became practice, where moral philosophy met the reality of blood and consequences. Structured repayment, dock his wages to recover the stolen amount, but also pay for his sister's treatment and count it as an advance against future earnings. Make him work off the debt while showing the organization takes care of its people. Silence. Vincent and Marcus Quinn exchanged looks. Angela's expression was unreadable. James Maloney sipped his coffee like this was the most boring conversation he'd had all week. Then Vincent spoke. That's soft. In this business, theft is theft. You steal, you pay with blood. Anything else looks weak. It looks strategic, Elias countered. Marcus Webb has 15 years of loyal service. One mistake. You kill him, you lose a good employee and send a message that loyalty doesn't protect you when you're desperate. You show mercy with accountability. You get loyalty that's earned instead of coerced. Pretty words, but this isn't a debate club. It's the streets. And on the streets, weakness gets you killed. Marcus Quinn cut in. Actually, the kid has a point. We've lost 3 good people in the last year because they were too afraid to ask for help when they had problems. Gambling debts, medical bills, whatever. They tried to solve it themselves, made bad decisions. If we create a structure where people can come to us before they do something stupid, we prevent problems instead of punishing them after the fact. Vincent sat back, didn't argue. just evaluated Elias with new eyes. Kieran let the silence stretch. Then, we're implementing Elias's recommendation. Marcus Webb gets his chance. Anyone objects? No one spoke. Good. Elias, sit down. Next order of business. The meeting continued for another 2 hours. Budget discussions, territory negotiations with the Cortese family to the west, a problem shipment coming in through Gary, Indiana that needed to be rerouted. Elias listened, took notes, started to understand the scope of what Kieran had built. It wasn't just crime, it was an empire. Legitimate businesses providing cover for illegal revenue streams. Political connections through James Maloney. Legal protection through Sarah Chen. Financial sophistication through Angela Rossi. And violence when necessary through Vincent Torres and Marcus Quinn. A machine. Well-oiled, efficient, and built on a foundation of intelligent people making calculated decisions. His father's organization had been nothing like this. Dante Salvatore had ruled through intimidation and tradition. Do what I say because I'm the boss. Kieran's model was different. Do what makes sense because we're all invested in the outcome. The meeting ended at noon. People filed out, handshakes and nods. Angela stopped to tell Elias his financial modeling was impressive. Sarah Chen gave him her card, said to call if he needed legal research assistance. Then it was just Kieran, Lucian, and Elias. You did well, Lucian said. Better than I expected. That's not a compliment, is it? It's an observation. Your father never would have admitted when he didn't know something. You asked questions, showed you were learning. That's worth more than false confidence. Kieran stood. Walk with me. They left through the back exit. Rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet, reflecting the gray sky like mirrors. Kieran walked with his hands in his pockets. No destination, just movement. You passed week 1. Proved you can analyze problems and propose solutions. Showed my people you're not dead weight. That's the easy part. He stopped at a corner, waited for the light. Week 2 is different. I need to know if you can handle the other side of this business. The side that doesn't get solved with legal research and clever solutions. Elias felt his stomach tighten. What does that mean? It means there's a problem that needs fixing, and the fix isn't going to be comfortable. The light changed. They crossed. The problem's name was Tommy Ricci. Kieran explained as they walked. Tommy was 31, low-level enforcer for the organization. Collected debts, provided security for gambling operations, did whatever Vincent Torres told him to do. Reliable? Not smart, but loyal. Except lately Tommy had been talking. To the wrong people. Specifically to an FBI agent named Thaddeus Crane. We don't know how much he's given them, Kieran said. David's been monitoring his communications. Nothing concrete yet, but the pattern's there. Meetings that don't make sense. Phone calls to numbers we can't trace. He's feeding someone information. How do you know it's the FBI? Because James Maloney has a contact in the Chicago field office. Woman he used to work with. She gave him a heads up. Said there's a new investigation into our South Side operations. And the intel is too good to be coming from outside. Someone's talking. They stopped at a park. Humboldt Park. Empty in the post-rain gloom. Just pigeons and wet benches and the smell of wet concrete. Here's the situation. Tommy's not smart enough to be careful. He's leaving a trail. Eventually, he's going to give the FBI something they can actually use. When that happens, people go to prison. Good people. People who've been loyal to this organization for years. Kieran sat on a bench, gestured for Elias to join him. I need to know what he's told them, what kind of case they're building, whether we need to shut down operations or if it's containable. And I need to know soon. So question him, interrogate him. We will, but there's a problem. Tommy's not going to talk to Vincent or Marcus. He knows what happens if he admits to being an informant. He'll deny everything until we have no choice but to assume the worst and act accordingly. The implication hung in the air. Act accordingly. Such polite words for violence. What do you want me to do? Kieran turned, met his eyes. Tommy knew your father, working for him before the transition. And he knew you when you were a kid. Used to drive you to school sometimes when your father needed the car. You remember him? Elias searched his memory. Found something. A younger guy with an easy smile. Made jokes. Let Elias change the radio station. Yeah, I remember. Good, then he'll talk to you. Not as an interrogator, as Dante's son, someone he trusts, someone who's in the same position he is. Forced to work for the man who killed the boss. The pieces clicked together. Elias felt cold. You want me to befriend him? Get him to confess. I want you to have a conversation. Find out what he's told the FBI, whether he's trying to protect himself or actively sabotaging the organization, whether there's a deal that can be made or if the situation's already beyond salvage. Kieran stood. This is the real test, Elias, not legal analysis, not financial modeling. This, reading people, extracting information, making decisions based on incomplete data and high stakes. And if I find out he's an informant, what then? Then we'll discuss options. But that's step 2. Step 1 is finding out the truth. They set it up for that night. Vincent Torres made a call, told Tommy to meet him at a bar in Bridgeport. Place called The Rambler, working class joint, darts and pool tables and beer that came in pitchers. Except when Tommy arrived at 9 p.m., Vincent wasn't there. Elias was, sitting in a corner booth, 2 beers on the table, looking as nervous as he felt. Tommy stopped, recognized him. The confusion was visible. Elias Salvatore. Hey, Tommy, long time. Tommy slid into the booth slowly, wary. What are you doing here? Vincent said. Vincent's not coming. It's just us. I asked him to set this up. I needed to talk to someone who knew, who understood. Elias pushed one of the beers across. Someone who remembers what it was like before. Tommy didn't touch the beer. Before what? Before Kieran Ashford killed my father and took over everything. The name hung between them. Tommy's expression shifted. Less wary, more confused. You're working for him. I don't have a choice. He gave me 30 days to prove I'm useful, or he kills 52 people from my father's organization. People I grew up with. People who don't deserve to die for my father's mistakes. Elias took a drink, handshaking just enough to be noticeable. Not acting, actually shaking. You're in the same boat, forced to work for the guy who destroyed everything. I thought maybe you'd understand. Tommy's shoulders relaxed, just slightly. He picked up the beer. Yeah, I understand. Your father wasn't perfect, but he was our boss. We were loyal. Ashford comes in, kills him, and now we're supposed to just, what, pretend that's normal. Is it normal? This life, nothing's normal. You do what you're told or you end up dead. That's the only rule that matters. He drank. But I don't have to like it. They talked for an hour. Elias asked questions, casual, sympathetic. What was it like working for Vincent? Did he miss the old days? Did he feel safe? That last question made Tommy pause. Safe, no. Nobody's safe in this. You do your job. Keep your head down. Hope you don't become a problem. What kind of problem? The kind that gets solved with a bullet. Tommy leaned in, voice lower. You know what Ashford did to the guys who tried to fight back, the ones who said they wouldn't work for him? They disappeared, just gone. Nobody talks about it, but we all know. So you just submit, hope for the best. What else is there? Tommy's eyes were tired, older than his 31 years. I got a kid, Elias, daughter, she's 4. Her mom left when she was a baby. It's just me. I can't afford to be brave. I can't afford principles. I just need to survive long enough to see her grow up. The daughter, that was new information. David Park's research hadn't mentioned a kid. Elias filed it away. Do you think about getting out, leaving Chicago, starting over somewhere else? Tommy laughed, bitter. Every day. But guys like us, we don't get out. We're in until we're dead or in prison. That's the deal. What if there was another option? Tommy's expression changed, guarded. What are you talking about? I heard things, rumors, that some people are talking to the FBI, making deals. Witness protection, clean slate, new life, somewhere safe. Elias watched Tommy's face. Is that real? Could someone actually get out that way? The silence stretched. Tommy's hand tightened on his beer bottle. His eyes darted to the door. Back to Elias, calculating. Where'd you hear that? Around. People talk. I'm Dante Salvatore's son. People tell me things. Think I might have influence with Ashford. Which is a joke, but they don't know that. Tommy was quiet for a long moment. Then, if someone was talking to the FBI, if that person had a good reason, like protecting their kid, making sure she grows up with a father who's not in prison or dead, would you understand that there it was, not a confession, but close enough? Elias felt his heart hammer. I'd understand, but I'd also worry, because if Ashford found out, there's no mercy there. You've seen what he does. I know. Tommy's voice was barely above a whisper. But what am I supposed to do? Vincent's got me collecting from people who can't pay, beating them up when they're already broken. I can't. My daughter can't see me like that. Can't grow up knowing her dad was a thug. I need out. The FBI offered away. Said if I give them enough, they'll put us both in protection. New names, new city, clean start. Elias reached across, put his hand on Tommy's arm. How much have you given them? Not much. Dates of shipments, names of a few people who run the gambling operations. Nothing that would hurt anyone directly, just enough to keep them interested, to keep the deal on the table. Who's your contact? Tommy hesitated. Then Agent Thaddeus Crane. He seems like a good guy, says he wants to help me, that he understands I'm not a bad person, just stuck in a bad situation. Agent Thaddeus Crane, the name Kieran would want, the confirmation of betrayal. Elias squeezed Tommy's arm. I get it. I really do. But you need to be careful. Ashford has people everywhere. If he finds out, he won't. I've been careful. Only meet Crane in public places. Use burner phones. Never write anything down. Tommy looked at him, desperate. You won't tell anyone, right? You understand you're stuck too. We're in this together. Of course not. I won't say anything. The lie tasted like copper, like blood. They finished their beers, made plans to meet again. Tommy left first. Elias sat alone in the booth staring at his empty bottle. He'd done it. Gotten the confession, gotten the name, everything Kieran needed to know. And now Tommy Ricci was a dead man. Kieran listened to the report in the penthouse. Midnight, city lights sprawling below like a constellation of bad decisions. Agent Thaddeus Crane, shipment dates and gambling operation names. Limited information so far, but enough to keep the FBI interested. Kieran paced, thinking. Tommy's not malicious, just scared, desperate, trying to protect his daughter. Does it matter? Elias's voice was flat. He's still betraying the organization. It matters to the decision. Malicious intent means he's a threat that needs eliminating. Fear and desperation mean there might be another solution. What solution? He's already talking to the FBI. The damage is done. Kieran stopped pacing, looked at Elias. What do you think should happen to him? Not again, not another impossible choice. I think you're going to kill him no matter what I say. So why ask? Because I want to know if you understand the stakes. Tommy Ricci has a 4-year-old daughter. If he goes into witness protection, she grows up safe. If he destroys, she grows up without a father. Those are the two options. There's no third path, no clever legal solution, just a choice between bad outcomes. So what should happen? Elias walked to the window, pressed his forehead against the cold glass. Down below, people were living normal lives, going to bars, catching cabs, not deciding who lives and dies. You showed mercy to Marcus Webb. Why not Tommy? Marcus stole equipment. Victimless crime. Tommy's feeding information to federal agents. That puts everyone at risk. Different situations, different stakes. He has a daughter. Yes. She's 4 years old. Yes. If you kill him, she grows up alone. Yes. Elias turned. Then don't kill him, scare him. Make it clear the FBI can't protect him. Give him a choice. Stop talking and live, or continue and face consequences. But don't take her father away. Kieran's expression was unreadable. That's your recommendation. That's what I think a decent human being would do. We're not decent human beings, Elias. We're criminals. The sooner you accept that, the easier this gets. I don't want it to get easier. The words came out before Elias could stop them. Raw, honest. Kieran studied him. Long moment. Then, no, you don't. And that's why you're valuable. Because you still have a conscience. Still feel the weight of these decisions. Your father never did. I'm not sure I do anymore. But you feel it, and that makes you careful, thoughtful. Less likely to make the kind of mistake that comes from not giving a damn. He walked to his desk, picked up a phone, dialed. Vincent, it's me. We have confirmation on Tommy Ricci, FBI informant. Agent Thaddeus Crane is his handler. Limited information shared so far, but it'll escalate. I need you to bring him in. Tomorrow night, quietly. Elias felt his stomach drop. What are you? Kieran held up a hand, kept talking. No, not a permanent solution. We're going to have a conversation. Explain the situation. Give him options. Then we'll decide next steps. Set it up for midnight tomorrow, the usual place. And Vincent, make sure he understands his daughter's safety depends on his cooperation. That should motivate honesty. He hung up, looked at Elias. Tomorrow night, you and I are going to talk to Tommy Ricci. You're going to be there when I explain what happens to informants, when I lay out his choices, and then you're going to help me decide what to do with him. Because this isn't about legal analysis or financial modeling. This is about understanding how power works, how loyalty works, how fear and mercy and violence all intersect to keep an organization functioning. I don't want to be there. I know. That's exactly why you need to be. Elias didn't sleep that night either. Lay in the dark of the penthouse bedroom, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Tommy Ritchie, about a 4-year-old girl who didn't know her father was about to be dragged into a room and forced to choose between betrayal and survival, thinking about the choice he'd made, recommending mercy, hoping it would matter, knowing it probably wouldn't. At some point he got up, went to the living room, found Lucian sitting in one of the leather chairs reading a book by lamplight. Can't sleep. Lucian didn't look up. Did you know about Tommy? I suspected. He was too nervous, too careful. The signs were there if you knew how to look. And you didn't do anything. Not my job. I'm the consigliere. I advise. Kieran decides. Vincent executes. He turned a page. You did good work tonight. Got the information without making Tommy suspicious. That's a rare skill. I feel like I just signed his death warrant. You did, but he signed it first when he started talking to the FBI. You just confirmed the signature. Elias sat on the couch, put his head in his hands. How do you live with it? The decisions, the consequences, the people who die because of choices you make. Lucian set down his book. You compartmentalize. Tell yourself it's not personal, that it's just business, that everyone in this life knows the risks. You build walls between what you do and who you are, and over time the walls get higher and thicker until you can't even see over them anymore. Does it work? No, but it helps you sleep. They sat in silence. Outside the city hummed, sirens in the distance, car horns, the white noise of urban life. Your father, Lucian said quietly, never struggled with these decisions, never lost sleep, never questioned whether he was doing the right thing. He just acted, decisively, violently, without remorse. And that's supposed to make me feel better. It's supposed to make you understand that you're not him, that the fact you're sitting here at 3 in the morning struggling with what you did means you're fundamentally different. Whether that's better or worse, I don't know, but it's different. Elias looked at him. What would you do about Tommy? Honestly, I'd kill him. Clean. Quick. Make it look like an accident. His daughter would grieve, but she'd be alive and safe, and eventually she'd move on. The organization would be protected. The message would be sent. It's the logical solution. But Kieran's not asking me, he's asking you. And that means he's testing something. Maybe he wants to see if you'll prioritize mercy over security. Maybe he wants to see if you'll make the hard choice. Or maybe he just wants to see how you handle the weight of deciding someone's fate. Lucian picked up his book. Either way, tomorrow night you'll find out what kind of man you're becoming. Elias went back to bed, didn't sleep, watched the sky lighten from black to gray to the dirty gold of Chicago sunrise. Day 10 of 30, 20 days to go. And tonight, Tommy Ritchie would walk into a room and Elias would help decide if he'd walk out. The day crawled by. Elias tried to work. Reviewed the South Loop property files. Made calls to contractors. Pretended everything was normal. At 6 p.m., Catherine brought dinner. Lasagna from Rossi's? He couldn't eat. At 8 p.m., Kieran called. Car picks you up at 11:30. Dress casual. This isn't a business meeting. At 11 p.m., Elias stood in the bathroom, staring at his reflection. Same face, same dark hair and pale skin and eyes that hadn't slept in days. But something was different. Something in the set of his jaw. The hardness around his mouth. 10 days ago, he'd been a law student. Now he was. What an informant who informed on informants. A collaborator, a survivor. He didn't know. At 11:30, he went downstairs. The Mercedes was waiting. Kieran drove. Same route as before. South and west. Into neighborhoods where the streetlights were broken and the buildings leaned like drunks. They parked behind a warehouse. Different one from where his father had died. But it smelled the same. Rust and old blood and fear. Vincent Torres waited at the entrance, nodded at Kieran, looked at Elias like he was a problem that hadn't been solved yet. Inside the warehouse was mostly empty. Just a metal chair in the center of a cleared space. And sitting in that chair, hands zip-tied behind his back, was Tommy Ritchie. He looked up when they entered, saw Elias. Understanding dawned in his eyes. Then betrayal, then resignation. You told them. Elias couldn't speak. His throat had closed up. Kieran walked forward, calm, professional. Tommy, we need to talk about your relationship with Agent Thaddeus Crane. Tommy's face went white. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie, Elias confirmed everything last night. The meetings, the information you've been providing, the deal you think you're making for you and your daughter. Kieran pulled up another chair, sat facing Tommy. Here's the situation. You've been feeding the FBI intel on our operations. Not much, not enough to do real damage yet, but enough to start building a case. That makes you a liability. I had to protect my daughter. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You're scared. You want out. You think the FBI can give you a clean exit. I get it. But here's what you don't understand. The FBI doesn't care about you. They care about me, about this organization. You're just a tool. And when you're done being useful, they'll discard you. Witness protection sounds good until you realize you're living in some nowhere town in Kansas with a new name and no support system and the constant fear that someone will recognize you. Tommy's voice cracked. It's better than being dead. Is it? Kieran leaned forward. Because there's a third option. You stop talking to Agent Crane. You tell him the deal's off. You work for me. Truly, completely. And in exchange, I make sure your daughter is protected. Good school, college fund, safe neighborhood, everything you want for her. But you earn it by being loyal. Not to the FBI, to me. And if I refuse, Kieran's expression didn't change. Then we have a problem. Elias watched it unfold. The negotiation, the threat hidden under reasonable words. The trap closing around Tommy like a fist. Tommy looked at Elias. You did this. You made me trust you. You're just like your father. The words hit like a physical blow. Elias stepped forward without thinking. I'm trying to save your life, you idiot. Kieran's giving you a choice. Take it. Some choice. Work for him or die. That's not a choice. That's slavery. It's survival, Kieran said. Same as what you were trying to do with the FBI. Different master, same outcome. The question is, which one gives your daughter the better life? Tommy was crying now, silent tears running down his face. I can't. I already told Crane too much. He knows about the shipments, about the gambling operations. If I back out now, he'll arrest me. Use what I gave him to put me away. I'm trapped. Don't you see I'm trapped? Kieran stood, looked at Vincent. Take him to the back room. Give me 10 minutes. Vincent hauled Tommy up, dragged him away. The sound of his protests faded into the warehouse depths. Kieran turned to Elias. Well, what? What should I do? He's admitted he can't stop talking to the FBI because they'll arrest him, which means he's a continuous threat, but he's also a father trying to protect his child. And you recommended mercy. So, what's the solution? Elias's mind raced. There had to be an answer, some clever legal strategy, some way to thread this needle. What if we feed the FBI bad information, use Tommy to send them on wild goose chases? Make Crane think he's got a valuable asset while actually protecting your operations. Kieran considered it. Interesting, but risky. If Crane figures out he's being played, he'll flip Tommy harder, offer him a better deal in exchange for real information. And Tommy's not sophisticated enough to maintain a double game long term. Then what, you're going to kill him? That depends on you. On me? On whether you're willing to do what's necessary to protect the organization while still honoring your principles. Kieran stepped closer. I'm going to make you an offer, Elias. One time only. You can take it or refuse it, but you need to decide now. Elias waited, felt the weight of the moment pressing down like atmosphere. I'll let Tommy live. I'll even honor my promise to protect his daughter. But in exchange, you're going to be the one who delivers the message. You're going to be the one who makes sure Tommy understands the consequences of continuing to work with the FBI. And you're going to do it in a way that leaves no doubt about what happens if he betrays us again. What does that mean? Kieran picked up something from a nearby table. A handgun, Glock 19, standard issue, 9mm. He held it out to Elias. It means you pull the trigger. The warehouse spun. Elias stared at the gun, at Kieran's impassive face, at the choice being offered. Kill Tommy Ricci. Prove you're willing to make the hard decision. Save 52 other lives by sacrificing one. Or refuse. Maintain your principles. Watch Kieran do it anyway. And know you failed the test. I can't. You can. Question is whether you will. This is insane. I'm not a killer. Not yet. but you're becoming one. It's inevitable. The only question is whether you control when and how it happens, or whether circumstance forces your hand later. Kieran's voice was almost gentle. I'm giving you agency, Elias. The ability to choose. That's more than most people in this life ever get. Elias looked at the gun, at his own hand, imagined wrapping his fingers around the grip, imagined pointing it at Tommy, at a man who'd driven him to school, who'd made jokes and let him change the radio station, who had a 4-year-old daughter. Imagined pulling the trigger. His hand reached out, trembling, closed around the Glock. It was heavier than he'd expected, colder, real in a way that made everything else feel like theater. Kieran nodded. Vincent, bring him back. The world narrowed to a tunnel, Tommy being dragged back to the chair, the sound of his breathing, the warehouse lights casting shadows that looked like accusing fingers. Elias raised the gun, pointed it at Tommy's chest. His arms shook so badly he could barely keep it level. Tommy looked at him. Please, please don't. Think about my daughter. Think about what kind of man you want to be. What kind of man do you want to be? His mother's words in the hospital. Be yourself. Don't be your father. Don't be Kieran. Be yourself. Who was that? He didn't know anymore. Elias's finger found the trigger, applied pressure, felt the resistance. The mechanical certainty of what would happen if he pulled just a little harder. 1 pound of pressure, that's all it would take. 1 pound, and Tommy Ricci would be dead, and Elias would be a killer, and there would be no going back. He stood there, frozen. The gun pointed at a man's heart, his own heart hammering so hard he thought it might burst. Seconds passed, felt like hours. Then Elias lowered the gun. I can't. He held it out to Kieran, hands still shaking. I can't. Kill me if you want. Fail me. Let the 52 people die. I don't care. I can't do this. Kieran took the gun, looked at Elias for a long moment. Then he turned to Tommy and shot him. 1 bullet, center mass. Tommy jerked, slumped, blood spreading across his shirt like a blooming flower. No, not dead. Gut shot, painful but not immediately fatal. Tommy gasped, looked down at the wound, at the blood, at his life leaking out. Kieran knelt beside him. You have about 20 minutes, maybe 30 if you're lucky. I'm going to call an ambulance. They'll get here in time to save you, but first you're going to understand something. This, he gestured at the wound, this is mercy, because Elias asked for it, because he believes you deserve a chance. But if you ever talk to Agent Crane again, if you ever even think about betraying this organization, next time the bullet goes in your head and your daughter becomes an orphan, are we clear? Tommy nodded, blood on his lips. Clear. Kieran stood, pulled out his phone, called 911, gave the address, hung up. Then he turned to Elias. You failed the test, but I'm going to count it as a pass anyway. No, why, my way? Elias couldn't speak, could only stare at Tommy bleeding on the floor. Because refusing to kill him took more strength than pulling the trigger would have. Your father would have shot him without thinking. Most people in this life would have. But you held a gun on a man who betrayed you and still couldn't do it. That's not weakness. That's something else, something rare, and I'm going to find out if I can use it. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. Let's go. They walked out, left Tommy bleeding, left Vincent to clean up, left the warehouse in the smell of blood and the memory of a choice Elias had made. In the car, neither spoke. Kieran drove through empty streets, back toward the lights and the towers and the penthouse prison. Finally, Elias found his voice. Will he live? Yes, I'm a good shot. Hit him where it would hurt but not kill. He'll recover, and he'll remember. And if he talks to the FBI again, he won't. They pulled into the Trump Tower garage. Kieran killed the engine, turned in his seat. You have 20 days left. In that time, I'm going to keep testing you, keep pushing you to see where your boundaries are, where you'll compromise and where you'll hold the line. And at the end, I'm going to decide if you're worth keeping around. Not because you're useful, but because you're something different, something this organization needs. What does it need? A conscience, someone who remembers what it costs when we make these decisions, someone who feels the weight. He got out. Go to bed. Tomorrow we start week 3. It gets harder from here. Elias rode the elevator up, walked into the penthouse, went straight to the bathroom and vomited until there was nothing left. Then he sat on the floor, back against the wall, staring at his hands. They were shaking, still shaking. 10 days ago, he'd been planning to take the bar exam, become a corporate lawyer, live a clean life. Now he'd held a gun on a man, watched him get shot, stood there and done nothing. And tomorrow he'd wake up and do it again. Whatever test came next, whatever impossible choice. Because 52 people's lives depended on him passing. Because his mother needed treatment. Because he'd shaken Kieran Ashford's hand and made a deal. And in this life, deals were kept or people died. Those were the only two options. Elias closed his eyes, counted to 10, started counting to 20. The 30 days ended on September 14th, 1985. Elias woke that morning in the penthouse, counted to 31 more times, and realized he was still breathing. The 52 hostages were released that afternoon. Vincent Torres drove them to neutral ground, handed them cash, told them to disappear. Kieran kept his word. Elias became consigliere in training. Lucian taught him the real work. How to read people, how to negotiate without showing weakness, how to know when violence was the answer and when it was just waste. His mother's treatment continued. By December, she was in remission. By spring of '86, the doctors used the word miracle. Elias visited twice a week, never told her what he'd become. Tommy Ricci recovered, worked off his debt in silence, never spoke to Agent Crane again. His daughter turned 5. Kieran paid for her birthday party. The months blurred, legal work, territory negotiations, money laundering through legitimate businesses. Elias was good at it, better than good. He found he had a talent for the gray spaces between legal and criminal, for making problems disappear with paperwork instead of bullets. But Agent Thaddeus Crane didn't disappear. March 1986. Elias sat in a coffee shop in Lincoln Park. Crane slid into the booth across from him. Mid-40s, tired eyes, wedding ring. "Mr. Salvatore, we should talk." "I don't talk to federal agents." "Even when they have evidence, you helped obstruct a federal investigation, Tommy Ricci. You extracted his confession, reported it to Kieran Ashford, facilitated witness intimidation." Crane pushed a folder across. "That's 20 years. Elias didn't open it. "What do you want?" "Same thing I wanted from Tommy. Information. Help us build a case against Ashford. In exchange, immunity. Protection." "I'm not interested." "Then you're a fool. How long until Ashford decides you know too much, until you become the liability?" Crane leaned forward. "I can offer you a way out, real one. Not 30 days of proving yourself, actual freedom." Elias looked at the folder, at Crane's wedding ring, at the choice being offered. "I need time. You have 72 hours, then I file charges." 3 days. Elias worked through them in a haze, reviewed contracts, attended meetings, pretended everything was normal. On the third night, he went to Kieran's office. Midnight. Rain against the windows. "Agent Crane approached me, wants me to inform. Threatened prosecution." Kieran didn't look up from his paperwork. "What did you tell him?" "That I needed time." "Honest, what do you want to do?" The question surprised him. "You're asking him. I'm asking." Kieran set down his pen. "You could work with the FBI, feed them information, eventually testify, walk away clean, or you could stay, become what you've been training to be. But you need to choose. Not because I'm forcing you, because you want it." Elias walked to the window. Chicago glittered below. Same view as the penthouse, same city, different meaning. "If I stay, what happens to Crane?" "Nothing. He files his charges. Sarah Chen makes them disappear. He gets reassigned. The investigation stalls. Standard procedure. And if I go, I don't chase people who leave, honestly. You want out. Take it. The 52 hostages got their freedom. You've earned yours." It should have been easy. Walk away, clean slate. But Elias thought about his mother, about Marcus Webb's sister, about Tommy's daughter, about all the small mercies that didn't happen in his father's organization. "I'll stay, but I want something." "Name it." "I feed Crane minor intelligence. Nothing that hurts us. Just enough to keep his satisfied. Build trust. And when the time comes when you actually need someone inside the FBI, I'm positioned." Kieran smiled. "You're learning. Done." 2 years passed. Elias played both sides, gave Crane scraps, gave Kieran everything. The FBI investigation went nowhere. Arrests were made but never stuck. Evidence disappeared. Witnesses recanted. Isabeau Salvatore celebrated 2 years cancer-free, moved to a condo in Evanston, started painting, never asked her son about work, and Elias discovered something in Kieran's private files. June 1988, late night, the office empty, a locked drawer he wasn't supposed to access. Inside contracts, financial records, partnership agreements from 1983. between Kieran Ashford and Dante Salvatore. Initial investment $6.8 million, Dante's contribution. Territory expansion west, 50-50 split, but the next document showed transfers. Dante moving money, slowly, carefully, $2 million over 18 months, embezzled from the partnership, gambled away in Atlantic City. Kieran's retaliation hadn't been collection of a loan, it had been punishment for theft. His father had stolen first. Everything that followed the killing, the takeover, Elias's 30 days, all of it was justified response. Elias sat in the dark office, stared at the proof, felt something crack inside him. He'd spent 3 years hating Kieran for killing a thief, for destroying a criminal, for doing exactly what the code demanded. The phone rang, Kieran's private line. Found the files. Elias's hand tightened on the receiver. You knew I would. You were going to look eventually. Better now than later. Question is what you do with it. Why didn't you tell me the first night? You could have shown me this, proved my father deserved it. Because it wouldn't have mattered. You needed to hate me. Needed that anger to survive. Now you don't need it anymore. Now you need the truth. The line went dead, September 1989. 4 years after his father's death. Agent Crane called an emergency meeting. Federal building, secure room. We have him, Kieran Ashford, weapons trafficking, RICO charges, multi-state conspiracy. We arrest him tomorrow. Elias felt cold. Based on what evidence? Confidential informant. Someone inside his organization. Not you, Crane added quickly. Someone else. We've been working them for 6 months. They delivered everything. Who? Can't say, but it's solid. He goes away for life. And you're clean. Free. Just like we planned. Except they hadn't planned this. Someone else had betrayed Kieran. Someone Elias hadn't protected him from. He left the federal building. Drove straight to Trump Tower. The penthouse. Kieran was waiting. They're moving tomorrow. Arrest warrant. RICO. Someone talked. Kieran nodded, calm. I know. You know how do you? Because I arranged it. The world stopped. What? Kieran poured 2 whiskeys, handed one to Elias. 4 years ago, I killed your father, took his organization, forced you into service. Everything that happened after your transformation, your choices, your loyalty, it was all a test. To see if you could be what this organization needed. A conscience with teeth, mercy with strength. The informant, the RICO case. You set it up. I'm tired, Elias, 41 years old. Been doing this since I was 16. Built an empire. Maintained it. But for what? To die in a warehouse like your father, to end up in prison, to just keep going until the violence consumes everything. He drank. I wanted a successor, someone who could run things differently, smarter. You're that person. So this is what you're handing me, the empire, and walking away. I'm giving you a choice. Tomorrow, FBI arrests me, based on evidence I provided. I plead guilty. Take 20 years. Out in 12 with good behavior. The organization transitions to you. Clean succession. No war. No chaos. Kieran set down his glass. Or you walk away, disappear. Use everything you learned and become someone else. Why would you choose prison at the? Because I'm already in one, this life, this endless cycle. I'm choosing a different cage, one with an exit. He moved to the window. Your father never understood. Power isn't the point, survival is. And sometimes survival means knowing when to stop. Elias stood beside him, the city below. 4 years of choices, of compromises, of becoming something he'd never intended. What if I don't want either option? What if I turn you in myself, real justice, not your arranged plea? Kieran smiled. Then you've learned nothing. Justice is a luxury, Elias. Survival is necessity. Choose, June 12, 1989. 11:43 p.m. Elias stands at the penthouse window, the Beretta on the desk, the whiskey untouched. In 17 minutes, FBI raids Kieran's properties. Arrest made. The empire transfers. Except Elias made a different choice. He called Crane, told him the truth. Kieran arranged everything, the informant, the evidence, all of it controlled. Crane moved the arrest up, rooftop of Trump Tower. Kieran waiting. You told them. Not angry, impressed. I'm not taking your empire. I'm not walking away. I'm ending this properly. By sending me to real prison instead of the comfortable version I arranged. By making sure the choice isn't yours anymore. FBI snipers on neighboring buildings. Crane on the megaphone. Surrender or die. Kieran looked at Elias. You became better than me. Stronger. You found the line I couldn't see. What line? Between justice and survival, I chose survival, you chose something else. The shot came from the north, sniper rifle. Clean, professional. Kieran fell. Blood on the rooftop, Chicago sprawling below. His last words, tell my story right, 30 years later. The office is quiet, Northwestern University. Professor Elias Salvatore, criminal justice. Former FBI consultant. He teaches about organized crime, about moral complexity, about the choices men make when survival and ethics collide. Students ask, did you ever meet real criminals? He tells them yes, tells them about a man who killed his father, who tested him, who showed him that power and mercy weren't opposites. He doesn't tell them he pulled the trigger, metaphorically, by choosing truth over arrangement, by refusing the easy out. The 52 hostages lived. His mother died peacefully in 2003. Tommy Ricci's daughter graduated college. Marcus Webb's sister survived. Small victories, small mercies. Was it worth it? Elias doesn't know. Some questions don't have answers. He just knows he survived. Not by becoming his father, not by becoming Kieran, by becoming himself, whatever that means. The city outside his window glitters, indifferent, eternal, still full of men making choices, still full of blood in streets you can't see from 42 stories up. Elias closes his eyes, counts to 10, still breathing. That's enough.